Hello, everybody. This is going to be the inaugural video for my new YouTube channel. So, a few people who are going to see this, you probably recognize I filled in for Weaponized Nerd Rage a few times, and he said I should probably start my own. So, well, here's going to be the first video. And from now on, this channel is going to be dedicated to mainly movie, but entertainment and general news. And the first thing that I'd like to discuss is going to be predictions for what is going to happen with Captain Marvel, which is coming out in March 7th, I believe. So, here's the thing. This thing has been marred with a shit ton of just bad PR, bad press, perceived virtue signaling by Marvel Studios and from Brie Larson, who's the actress who's going to star as Captain Marvel. So I just want to kind of break this thing down. I want to break it down to the numbers, the actors, and the PR situation. So first of all, let's just go over the character. So Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel they're going to be using in the movie is going to be the Carol Danvers character, which most people are familiar more with as Miss Marvel. And basically, her origin in the comics is she's a military operative. She's in the Air Force, and she gets caught in this explosion of this Kree device that fuses her DNA with the then current Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell, and she then kind of just she's a Kree human hybrid, but she inherits Kree abilities. And then eventually, after Captain Mar-Vell dies, she takes up the mantle, and there's been some kind of shitty comic runs involving that character. You know, a common name for her, because they've made her character progressively more masculine, has been Carl Manverse, which I believe was coined by Diversity in Comics. So that's the character's origin, and you know that's what they're going to be doing for the movie. But I think they're going to be skipping past the whole Miss Marvel stage. She's just going to be Captain Marvel right out of the get-go. So now that you have kind of the backdrop for the movie, which I mean we've seen it in the trailers as well, let's go into the casting. So the casting for this movie. So I'm going to go into the supporting cast, and then I'll cover Brie Larson. So you have Sam Jackson, who's coming back as a younger version of Nick Fury this time, and this time he has both eyes. So it does lead to the question, like, maybe we'll see how he loses one of those eyes. Maybe like a Skrull or something scratches it out, or he gets shot or something. So you have that. You have Jude Law, who obviously has great acting chops. You know, he's been in a ton of good movies. You know, not too much lately, actually, now that I think about it, but he's going to be playing Mar-Vell, or the original Captain Marvel. And then you get to the big star in the movie, or the one they want to push, which is Brie Larson. So here's the thing with Brie Larson. Brie Larson, she won an Academy Award for a movie called The Room. And The Room is... I haven't seen The Room. I've read the synopsis of The Room, so I can't comment on the visuals and the acting of it, but from the plot synopsis, it sounds kind of messed up, but it doesn't necessarily sound like a bad movie. And she won Best Actress for that at the 2016 Oscars. So, if you're going to get an actress, getting an Oscar winner isn't a terrible idea. Especially if one's available and one wants to be in the movie. Now, the question of whether or not she wants to be in this movie based on her facial expressions and what she puts out on social media is a completely different question in total. But, you know, that's really up for interpretation. It could just be that she is a bitch. It could just be that. It really could. And, you know, we've seen that with other actors and stuff before. We all know the Christian Bale situation that happened where he started screaming at a stagehand and, you know, a bunch of other stuff. So, you know, these people, you know, they can be a-holes in real life just like everybody else. So I don't think that's going to be indicative necessarily of her playing the character. So we have the cast, which is solid. It's a solid cast. I don't take off points for the cast. I think the cast is good. You know, despite Brie Larson's PR issues. So now we're going to go into the director the directors slash writers, which are the same people. Now, this is where my concern for this movie kind of comes in, is that we have two people now. They've been active. They've been working together since 2003. They've worked together on many projects together, both in writing and directing. So I don't take off points for that. But the problem is so the directors are Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, and both of them, like I said, they've worked with each other as far back as 2003 on many projects. But they've never really worked on anything to the scale of a Marvel movie. They've never worked on something, and this movie has a $152 million budget. They've never worked on something of that. They work on these little indie movies, these Oscar bait type movies, like a Moonlight or like a La La Land or something like that, where you have maybe some recognizable actors, but they're not movies that are meant to make money. They're movies that are meant to win awards. And they're designed for that. They're designed to be these hot button movies. So that does not really inspire confidence in me. That doesn't say, like, okay, these guys can handle a big budget movie. These aren't a James Cameron or a Ridley Scott or even a Russo brothers. I do believe that everybody does deserve a chance to do something like that, but I think you need to prove yourself on like a mid-range level first. Don't give them a $150 million budget. Give them like an $80 million budget and see what they can do with it. But moving past that, so that's something that Star Wars has been dealing with now too. Because look at Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson had never made anything to the scale of the Last Jedi, and it destroyed Star Wars. Let's be frank, it destroyed Star Wars because you gave somebody a film that they very clearly were not ready to make, and they didn't really give a crap about the fans and the people that enjoyed the brand. And this could be the same case for Marvel. They could have hired two people that just want to send a message, whether that's a feminist message, which we can see from the advertisement. We can see from the advertising on the trailers, because they have that little thing where they think it's Earth needs. It's supposed to say a hero, but before they show you the A and the O in that title, it's that the Earth needs her instead of hero. So you can tell they're already trying to signal the whole feminist angle there, or at least that's what it appears to be. But that could also just be a marketing tactic. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to go hand in hand with the movie. But again, we'll see when the film comes out. But now, after we get past the two directors, let's just talk quickly about the plot points that we do know of. And one of those plot points is that it takes place in the 90s. So in chronological order, this is actually the second MCU film, because Iron Man takes place in the year that it was made, which is 2008. And then Captain America, the First Avenger, takes place in the 1940s and 30s. I think it is just the 40s. So this movie, chronologically, is actually the second one in the MCU. So this will be interesting to see if they try to set some stuff up. And this is also the first time we get a look at a young Nick Fury. We don't really see him. We see a glimpse of him in the post-credit scene in Iron Man. Originally, that's the first time we meet him. So this is actually before that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how his character is different from his later versions. But again, we know that he's a main part of the movie. We know that they're going with the origin story. So Carol Danvers starts as an Air Force pilot. It looks like she gets caught in the Kree explosion. She goes to the Kree Empire, gets her memory wiped. And then eventually she comes back to Earth, and she has to fight the Skrulls. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the comics, Skrulls are basically these shape-shifting aliens that have, they kind of have superhuman strength and stuff. And they impersonate people. And then there's a big storyline in the comic books with them, but I think for this movie they're probably going to keep it kind of simple. They're just imitating regular people and studying Earth and stuff like that. So that's what we know so far. It doesn't sound like a bad plotline. I don't think it's a terrible plotline to have, especially if you're setting this character up. Now, the kind of issue I might have with it is that you're going to have this character come in Avengers Endgame, so you need to make sure that because this movie takes place in the 90s, so you need to explain where the hell Captain Marvel has been since whenever this movie ends, which I'm assuming is the mid to late 90s, all the way up to 2018, which is when Infinity War happened. So, you have at least 20 years, maybe more, where this character is completely out of the picture, and you need to explain where she has been. So, If the movie doesn't do a very good job of that, that's going to leave a lot of questions open for Avengers Endgame, which is only coming out a month and a half after this. So that's a question, but again, that's not necessarily a drawback. I kind of grade that one as even. So next we're going to look at the budget. So like I said before, the budget for the film is $152 million, and this was actually put out by the directors that was what the budget of the film was. And I'm going to estimate the marketing budget because I'm assuming they'll have a Super Bowl commercial for it, just like Endgame will probably have one for it. And the advertising budget for these things, I'm going to assume it's probably somewhere around $200 million. I would assume so. And I don't think that's a bad estimate. Usually, it's about the marketing budget is roughly the same as the operating budget. So, but in this case, since it's an MCU film, I'll give it the extra $50 million. So I'll say 200. So the total budget calculating in for advertising is about $350 million or a little over. So now you see what you need to do, because when it comes to making a profit for a film, you need to take a lot of things into consideration. Because the movie theaters get a cut of that, and because the studio, in the studio's eyes, what a profit is much different than what a profit might look like on paper. And a lot of movies will say, look, if this film doesn't break X barrier, then it's considered a failure. And for me, I feel like, some people might put that up at $1 billion because of Black Panther, and because the early reports of the pre-ticket sales for this film are saying that it's going to skyrocket, it's going to go past Black Panther. You could make more than like $1.2 billion. You could be looking, at Avengers 1 numbers, which is insane for a solo movie. And I don't know. I don't think it's going to make that, but I think what you're going to see is they're probably aiming for somewhere between an $800 million and a $1 billion for the total returns on this movie. Now, the problem that they're going to have is they're going to have issues in China, because the Chinese are not going to bite at this. It's a female character at the forefront, and I'm not trying to sound like a jackass here. I'm not trying to sound like I'm disparaging the movie because it's a female lead, but when they marketed Black Panther in China, they tried to cover up the fact that he was black. He was wearing the suit in all the promotional art. They didn't really show much of his skin because that doesn't sell very well in China, and they know that. And it's the same thing when they advertised Star Wars. John Boyega was not at the forefront of that advertising. He was barely even in it. They wanted to advertise the living crap out of Rose Tico because they wanted them to go see Star Wars, and obviously that didn't work for Star Wars. And I don't know off the top of my head what the Black Panther numbers were, but it's kind of similar for women in some cases. So they might not, they might advertise her with like the mask on, or they might advertise Sam Jackson and Jude Law more, or something like that. So I could see that happening. But China is a very big question mark, and that could make or break this movie financially. Because the domestic gross, you're probably just going to get the regular domestic gross, probably going to be like 500 million, maybe less. And then you could be looking at, from China. I mean, if The Last Jedi is any indication, you could be looking at $20 million, which is abysmal compared to what they want to make. They'd like to at least make 50 or 60 million dollars out of China, if not more, if they could. So the budgetary concerns, like I said, I think this movie's going to have to make between 800 million and $1 billion to be considered financially successful in the end. So going down past that, we can go into what the PR situation has been with Brie Larson. So here's the thing. Chadwick Boseman, who plays Black Panther, he is a guy who he's very good when he's talking to people about the film. He's very forward with people. He loves the fandom. He doesn't disparage people. You don't hear him talking out about how certain things are misogyny and virtue signaling and racism. You don't hear him really talking much about that. He's talking about how great the Marvel fans are and how he's really happy to be playing this character. He's talking about the movie, which is what people want to hear. They don't want to hear his social views necessarily. They want to hear about the movie. If he wants to do social stuff, that's fine, but you should do that separate from the movie marketing, which is what professionals usually do. Brie Larson, Now, she has come out on a couple occasions on certain things. Most early on, there was something involving A Wrinkle in Time where it was getting negative reviews by some male critics, from male film critics, and she basically said that, well, it's not a movie for males, it's a movie for women, so we don't care what your opinion is. It's like, well, you're a movie critic. Generally, you're supposed to have an objective opinion, even though a lot of them don't. You're supposed to have an objective opinion, and it's not supposed to necessarily be about who the target demographic of the film is and what your personal opinion of it is. It's supposed to be what your objective opinion of it is. And a lot of those reviews probably were objective opinions, but because they were from people that were not the target demographic of the movie, she thought it was a good idea to tell them to go screw themselves. So that was a bit of a gaffe. And then you also have the Stan Lee Memoriam picture on Twitter, which was a bit of an ego trip because she's holding a purse with her name plastered on it, and I'm sitting here thinking of Stanley. Might have been a smart idea to lose the purse. That could have been a mistake, and you know what? I'll give her the benefit of the doubt on that. It could have very easily been a mistake, or it could have just been a lack of forethought on her part in terms of posting that tweet. And then you also have this other issue with Kevin Feige. Now, Kevin Feige has handled the Marvel Cinematic Universe phenomenally over the course of its run of over 10 years now. But the thing that he's pushing now is he's pushing this core mentality that there's going to be a lot of these female characters coming into the MCU, which is fine. There are plenty of female characters that are great characters to put in the MCU. And now that they have the X-Men, they have a ton of them. You have Storm, you have Jean Grey, you have Psylocke, you have Polaris, you have Mystique, you have a crap ton of those X-Men characters. You got Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, because they're getting Fantastic Four as well. And you also still have characters in the MCU or that are still under Marvel's banner that you can introduce, like a Captain Marvel. So I don't hate that idea. But the fact of the matter is they're pushing this Carol Danvers character as she's the most powerful character in the MCU. That's a problem. And it's not a problem because she's a woman. It's a problem because, look, you don't want another Rey situation. You can't take a Rey situation. Well, actually, I shouldn't say you can't take it, but you shouldn't have one because that shouldn't be a discussion. You should learn from your mistakes. Rey, as a character, the way that she's written and the way that the story flows is a mistake because she is a Mary Sue. And if you want to debate that with me, that's fine, but she is a Mary Sue. And if you turn Captain Marvel into a Mary Sue, her movies are not going to make money. When she's in team-up films, if she's if she's doing that Mary Sue thing where she just beats everything in front of her, those movies are going to make less money because of that. The people said you can't sink Star Wars. People said Star Wars was unkillable, and now they've killed it. And the MCU is no different. They say it's unkillable. It can be killed with enough bad movies. It's completely possible. Now, you could look at her demeanor as well, because you can look at what happened with Ant-Man and the Wasp. So Ant-Man and the Wasp, Evangeline Lilly, who plays Wasp, she was really great in the marketing for that movie. She was great. She loved talking about it. She loved talking about the movie. She loved the fact that she had great chemistry with her co-stars. Michael Pena, Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Douglas, of course, Paul Rudd, and all that. They had great chemistry both on screen and in interviews, and it felt like they were really connected, which is what you want. Brie Larson, as far as I can tell in interviews, she sounds she tries to, it feels like she's trying to sound excited about this movie. It doesn't feel like she is excited about this movie. And to be fair, I really haven't seen a whole lot of interviews. I'm assuming those will be coming up shortly before the film, or whenever it gets screened for critics. Now, again, the PR thing could hurt this movie. It could definitely hurt this movie, and we've seen PR hurt other movies before. So, to end this thing, my final thoughts on this movie is that I think this movie is going to probably break even. I don't think it's going to make a whole bunch of money. I don't think it's going to make necessarily what Disney wants it to make. I'd put it around Thor Ragnarok numbers. I'd say it's going to make about 750 million, and I would say that assuming that they don't turn her into a Mary Sue character, I think that Carol Danvers would be a welcome addition to any team-up movies. Again, as long as they don't destroy that character by turning her into a Mary Sue. So that's my first video for the channel. I hope you guys like it. And I'm going to try and do these as much as I can whenever I have a topic I want to talk about. So, come on back, like the video, post your thoughts in the comments, hit the bell for notifications, and remember, I live my life without compromise. Do you?